My name's Christina, here to talk about money and the market. First off, I'm going to warn everyone that I have two dogs. I have my dog and a foster with me, so I apologize in advance for the heavy breathing and any dog-related noises you might hear. This week I wanted to talk about how the market and the government are both floundering and in a frenzy. I know last week I talked about the fact that the big numbers locally were that the market was, inventory was up by 25% and volume of sales was down by 33% for the remaining quarter of 2018. The way that that's translating now is the floundering frenzy portion. So I think what's happened is a lot of people have interpreted that data, and it's more or less kind of what I talked about last week in terms of a lot of people put the brakes on and say, oh my gosh, I'm going to hang tight and kind of go with typically those are people who are going with the grain of like, hey, this is the trend, I don't know, I can't really figure out what's going on, so I'm going to hang tight. Whereas there's another group of people who typically like to go against the grain and see this as a point of opportunity to jump in and take advantage of people who are quote unquote wishy-washy, not sure about what they want to do or what have you. And it's pretty evidenced by real estate, stock market for 2018 saw the Trump bump followed by the Trump slump. We're more or less kind of where we were when we started. The funny thing, and I know people get nervous about a lot of things, whether it's pricing is at all-time highs or something. There's always some reason that somebody's nervous to purchase or sell. Typically, it's more people get nervous about purchasing, and it's really just oftentimes it's first-time home buyers. It's somebody who's looking to trade up, somebody who's afraid to move on to the next thing. So you're seeing a lot of that kind of activity. And I think the most challenging part when you have a floundering kind of frenzy of a market is you don't get the same level of predictability that you do in a growing market or in some other market that has some level of stability. So, and that's maybe not quite the right way to put it, because I don't want to describe this market as not being stable, because jobs still look good, wage growth is still coming in. The amount of equity that people have in their homes, I understand, is maybe a slightly sensitive topic, because pre-recession, there was plenty of equity in the homes, but the problem is that, well, that's not necessarily true. In a market that has increasing values, you have increasing equity in your home. But when, for whatever reason, whether it's subprime lending or otherwise, or increase in interest rates or something, where there causes a bit of a price drop, your equity in your home goes down because the bank's not going to adjust their value. They still have a loan to you, not their loan isn't fluctuating based on the value of the house. So it's why real estate can be a really great investment in a rising market, but it can also be scary for a lot of people, because if they buy incorrectly, i.e. buy at the top and then the market corrects and it comes down, then it becomes an investment loss, hypothetically. And in a state like California, where appreciation swings are far more significant, it can make or break a lot of people. One time had a tenant who had a house in Encino that they were hoping to sell. We had it listed for, I think, $4 million at one point. When I met them, they were renting a they rented a 2-bedroom apartment from me for a couple of years. We're more than happy to stay, and that's moving out of I think it was some like 3,000 square foot house in Encino. So it's a drastic lifestyle change. And then on top of it, a couple of years later, they ended up purchasing a condo. So it was in large part because of the recession. I mean, it was ruthless. But in terms of kind of where we are now, I think for anybody who's looking to get a better wrangle on where the market is, I would compare it to where we are with the government shutdown, as it's the longest shutdown in U.S. history at this point. I think we're past 3 weeks. And the reason I compare it is there's kind of this ambiguous back and forth negotiation, whether it's the government or the Fed who's trying to determine what interest rates need to be and how that's impacting the market. There's kind of this push, pull kind of across the board, and it leaves the recipients, either the citizens or those that are looking to purchase property or what have you, or get into investing, whether it's stocks or otherwise. And there's just kind of this ambiguity. And you can see it based on, there was one article saying that CEOs are predicting a massive recession, like worldwide recession for 2019. And they were comparing it to CEOs' opinions in 2018. Well, something like that is opinion-based. I understand that everybody's got one. There's a part of me that thinks that something like that's just a bit of a bait, especially because they're not presenting data. They're just asking CEOs what they think is going to happen. And don't get me wrong, they must be smart. They landed there probably for no reason, probably for a very specific reason, and that's based on their intelligence, talent, their ability to work, all the above. But I think data and numbers are far more translatable, especially for day-to-day people. And it's just a matter of getting a better hold on interpreting the data and getting a better understanding of how it all works and what that means for us. So for instance, some of the data and articles are mortgage rates 30-year fixed at 4.5%. So when you compare that to where they've kind of been, so this article is basically saying mortgage rates are unchanged to start the week. They are up from last year. However, they've had a slight drop after the first bit of the year here. So with that, it's made interest rates a little more attractive. So you've had a slight uptick in mortgage applications, which is, let's see, I had that one. Anyways, mortgage applications have basically been up all year, which is total 2.5 weeks, so not too terribly exciting. But still, for interest rates to have gone up in comparison to last year and to have more applications, it's a good sign. And at 4.5%, we're still below 5. Not ideal, because obviously it's been below 4, but all good things must come to an end. But it'll be interesting to see, because it's like what I've been saying in terms of there's less growth. There's more, it just seems like there's more and more people who are looking around trying to figure out, like, where am I supposed to go? Where am I supposed to make more money? And the sad part is, I was showing property to a client last night who was in that position of young, making good money, looking to get started, trying to make smart decisions. Okay. So how do you go about that? Buying real estate's one way, buying stocks is another way. Anything related to that interest episode, we'll cover that, but it's challenging trying to figure out what to do, and you don't want to burn it all because you want to be able to retire, but it's challenging trying to figure out where to go, especially if real estate's going to level off and not increase in value at the 6% year-over-year growth that we've been at. So I think the expectation is that we're still going to grow, just not at the same rate that we've been growing at. So it's not to say that it's, at this point, a quote-unquote bad investment. It just means that the appreciation maybe isn't there. So typically when I have this conversation with people, I suggest pending their investors and not first-time home buyers. Pending their investors, I say target cash flow, because appreciation is kind of what you can target in extreme swings. But if we're at X point in the market, the best thing that you can do for yourself is to target cash flow, and then whatever, take a slight paycheck to yourself out of it, but feed it back into the property. Or, if you can earn more than whatever the cash flow rate that you're earning on that property, go put it there and just keep that circle of income coming in. And it's tough to find. I mean, that's kind of the tough part, is that there isn't a whole heck of a lot out there. But, and then on the flip side, there's more inventory coming on. There's more. It's almost like almost feels like a washer where there's stuff moving and you're seeing it all go and you're just trying to figure out, okay, it's working, it's cleaning, I guess it's doing what it's supposed to. So there are transactions happening, there are opportunities to get in to get lower property tax rates, but I guess what I'm trying to say when it's tough to find, it's tough to find those properties that are going to cash flow appropriately. So you would have to find a property that's priced well, as well as a property that can handle the rent such that you could cash flow appropriately. So that's talking about potential income. Sometimes it's just a matter of you just need to be the one to take title, so you put your money down, all of a sudden it's yours, and now you're the one accepting the checks as opposed to the prior owner. Sometimes you can find those. It's rare. The tough part about finding a property that maybe needs a little bit of TLC to get the numbers up to where they need to be, and you at a cash flowing rate where you want to be, is you will have vacancy to start with, because if you need to go in and do a little remodel, it means that you're just going to be out X number of months until that remodel is done and your tenant is in and paying you. So it's a bit of a fine line to walk, and it all depends on what you're looking for. The first time home buyer, like I said, he was young, getting started. For somebody like him, I've had clients like this before where they bought not a distressed home, but the property was poorly marketed. Livable as it was, not what you would put in today, not what you would have put in 10 years ago. One bathroom had never been remodeled. The home was built in the 60s. Another bathroom was maybe done at some point. Kitchen was done maybe in the 90s. But there was no cohesion to it, and it wasn't a complete gut job. So it was a very undesirable property for that reason. And that, a lot of times you can get the best deals on those. So say a home that was built, that was new construction or something or other in the 90s, where it's kind of like, oh, I remember this when I was growing up. Yep, this was the trend. We had a joke in the office last week asking, when was the last time somebody asked for a Mediterranean style home or a Tuscan style home? Those were huge pre-recession. Nobody's looking for like that gold granite. No one. That's probably the cheapest thing to buy out there right now. So on the flip side, as a first-time home buyer, something like that is maybe where you can build some equity, where you can go in and kind of slowly. So my clients who bought that house, they did a slow remodel. Did a couple bathrooms, refinanced on their loan, kept going, and all of a sudden they've built, they're probably at almost increasing their equity in the property by threefold. I'd like to say 5, but I think that's a bit of a stretch. And not totally sure where they're at with everything right now, so hard to say. But yeah, in less than a year, they've increased their equity in the property by increasing the value. So a lot of their equity came from sweat equity of the remodel, not from just putting more money down. And increase. So it's that whole leverage in terms of, okay, if I remodel the bathroom and spend $5 to $10,000 on remodeling the bathroom, I get $25,000 back in value for the cost of my home, depending on where to sell someday. So it can work nicely for that. So identifying a property that's distressed in that sort of space is good, especially if you can live in it and clean it up while you do that. So there's still opportunities to find some of those, and especially properties like that, it deters an awful lot of fix and flip or kind of professional flippers. So it's a much better one-off for an owner user, an investor. So there is opportunity out there. It takes a little homework. But it's another good example of how the market's floundering and how a property like that might go unnoticed, and why it's important to market, do what you can to get your point across and find the right people. So the next article I want to reference is, hopefully, I guess what I want to say is there's stability. So there is floundering behavior, but there's stability. It's a little bit like, well, honestly, can't think of a comparison. Maybe it's like probably comparable to something like a Camry, where it's not the coolest, flashiest, nicest car, but it does all the things it's supposed to, and you can mess with it as you see fit, and that will adjust the value. But ultimately, it's a Toyota, typically a hybrid. It's going to get good gas mileage, and it should do just fine. Those might flounder because they're boring, they're not that exciting, and it's a running joke I have with my parents' neighbor, because I drive the Lexus version of the Camry, and it's a good car, not my favorite, and his joke was that I should put racing stripes on it to make it more fun and flashy. But at the end of the day, it's really just a nicer Camry. And there's no reason to dislike them. They do exactly what they're supposed to, and there shouldn't be any stress, but doesn't mean that there's stress around, is it nice enough? Is it going to do what it's supposed to do? It is. It's 100% going to do what it's supposed to. Anyways, floundering, stability, maybe. Next article is household debt service ratio at series low. So again, this is referencing the amount of equity people have in their homes. When you have the increasing market, your equity increases in your home, and it means good things for the economy overall. Whether somebody chooses to get a HELOC, which is a home equity line of credit, which is a second mortgage, pending you choose to do the right thing with it. Again, we covered interest rates. If your interest rate on your HELOC is 5%, if you're going to take money out through a HELOC to go do something else, make sure that it's going to earn you in excess of 5% to make sure that you're doing your math correctly, because otherwise you will very quickly go in the hole. And again, this just points to a healthy economy. Part of the problem as to why the recession happened is everybody was having a lot of fun and doing lots of stuff, but there was no money behind it. It was all just bad loans. And because of lending restrictions right now, that's not a possibility really. So I know people get nervous, but the whole reason why it happened was these were bad subprime loans. The joke was as long as you could fog a mirror, you could get a loan with no money down. That's insane. That just meant that the banks owned everything, and that you were using a HELOC to go buy a jet ski or a boat. And if we haven't talked about it, boat is code for break out another 1,000. And that's if you're not driving a gigantic yacht or something. Then it's probably, boom, break out another 1 million. They're expensive and costly and decrease in value. It's like a worse variation of a car. However, they are really fun. Anyways, debt service ratio, it's series low. That just means that people have equity in their homes. It's a really good sign for the economy. GDP forecast, mid to high twos, estimate of shutdown impact. Again, this is surrounding the Fed's target of 2% for inflation. They've wanted to be at that. We've more or less reached that. They're just trying to maintain it and figure out how to stay there. Next one. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac mortgage serious delinquency rate declined in November. So this just means that people are financially healthy. It's good stuff. What this means is somebody bought a home, they have a loan payment, they're making their payments on time. And Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are keeping track of this across the board for everyone. And they're saying that the serious delinquency rate, that means somebody who's 90 days past due, has decreased. So that means that if somebody had some sort of drastic medical problem, they have not stopped paying their mortgage. That's fantastic news. Again, this contributes to the debt service ratio on properties. What was the exact language? Debt service ratio at series low. That just means that the proportion of equity in the home is increasing in comparison to the loan. Again, some of this is inflation with property values increasing. Some of it's just the fact that people are being responsible. Again, I always say that if we're comparing this market, saying we're at 04-05 levels pre-recession, the reason why that scares some people sometimes is that's when things got real squirrely. And the crazy thing about us floundering right now and not getting squirrely is this is what we should have done in 04 and 05. Prices should have leveled off. People should have cooled it and just done things that are right for them in their lifestyle or what have you. But because lending restrictions were so loosey-goosey at that time, it just went bananas. And people were keeping up with the Joneses and doing whatever it was that caused them to lose their shirt, basically. So it's really, really good news to see that people have a lot of equity in their homes. And the other thing too is I think, and I'd have to find numbers on this, I think people are moving less than they were back then. It just seemed like there was a lot of movement happening. And I think a lot of people are focused more on doing what's right for them, despite the popularity of Instagram and the internet and what it does to the psyche of somebody who feels like they need to have X number of followers or X number of likes. Whatever. Okay, covered delinquency. The big one that I think is really spectacular is no bank failures in 2018, first time since 2006. No bank failures since 2006. That's crazy. I mean, the number of problem banks has been like three figures plus for years. To have no problem banks is spectacular. Again, this references strict lending regulations. Strict lending regulations means that there's just a lot more financial hesitation people are taking, but it's for the right reason. If you can't afford something, don't buy it. If it's going to stress you out, don't buy it. A client of mine and I were talking a couple of weeks ago, I think I may have talked about this last week, saying that a lot of people have disposable income, and a lot of people don't want to be up to their necks in a mortgage, up to their chins, drowning. What do they call it? House poor, I think it's the appropriate term, where basically all your money is just going towards your house. So a lot of people, I think, don't want to do that, and they want this, like, sure, we'll call it Instagram worthy life, where they've got their house, but they're going to brunch, and then they're traveling, they get a dog, it's essentially all the wonderful things I like doing. So, going to Taco Tuesday, I don't know. Well, I'm complaining because it's really all my favorite things. I never wanted. It drives me nuts when people are like, "Oh, I have to stay home and save money. I don't want to go out to eat." I'm like, I hear you, but at least, okay, let's turn it into like a big fiasco where there's like 10 people. Make it a big mess. But I think that's more and more common where people just don't want to, where they're like me and they don't want to be like, oh, I shouldn't do that. It's like, okay, it's one thing to say should, but okay, so maybe you skip brunch this weekend and maybe you skip it once a month, but you're going to go those other 3 times. If we're going to be living 80, 90 years, there's some amount of lifestyle balance that's important to achieve. And I remember all these shows growing up of like Oprah, where it was like coupon clipping and all this stuff, and like, oh, save money here, save money there. Really want to spend an hour or 2 every week trying to figure out how to do that, or fire your cleaning lady or what have you. Probably, it's part of this stuff just contributes to the overall economy. So, anyways, I was talking about bank failures. There are none of those. That's spectacular. It means that banks are lending at appropriate rates. People are paying on time. It's all kind of like a domino effect of equity in homes is going up. Equity in homes is going up, either because the market's increasing or people are paying their mortgage. Serious delinquency rates are decreasing. People are paying their mortgage. And the nice thing is, banks will not fail if people pay them back. So it's kind of this wonderful upward movement cycle. It just seems like, again, I don't want to say it's not a bubble, but where it's just reaching a point where it's just like a rhythm of like, okay, A plus B equals C. And it's ironic because, again, we're slightly floundering. And it's more or less to be expected because we're reaching this precipice point of, okay, this is working. This is great. But developers, this is working, but I'm not seeing the profitability. My margins are decreasing. I got to step out. Okay, economy's still going. Okay, those guys got to go figure out what else to do. But that's just a small section of the economy, so not the end of the world. But they're still home builders, but it's not like the one-off developer. Or flippers, as the market slows and they can't get that significant increase, so while they're doing the work and the prices increase and they recoup the benefits, you don't see that as much either. So a lot of those people who are in the business for profitability got to go elsewhere or got to figure out what else to do. So it's still moving. It's just with those people leaving, it's just kind of teetering off, and that's kind of what we're seeing where it's leveling off, not dropping, but it's just kind of slow and stable, and people are like, what do we do? I don't know what to do. And it's just what suits your lifestyle. And people who are ready to take on the task of fitting their lifestyle will probably benefit, depending they're aggressive buyers. Yeah, it's kind of fascinating that way. Next article is, this one painful. Fed says student debt has hurt the U.S. housing market. We all decided college was very important, and college ain't cheap. Pardon. It's cold. It's rainy. I want tea. That was one of the things was, actually I was just listening to on Joe Rogan. He was talking about it today because he was talking about having some guests come on who was going to talk about the universal basic income. And part of what contributes to that is student debt. And if you look at the rate at which student debt or college is subsidized now versus what it was X number of years ago, it's drastic. Real estate gets more expensive. They got to pass those costs on to their students. It's It's wild. And there's a lot more effort, I think, that they put on the student to find grants, scholarships. So it's not to say that it's not out there, but it's just, if you want to find it, you got to go get it and you got to earn it. And even so, you're still going to leave with debt. And I know that that was a huge thing when I was in college and when I graduated, because I was in my sophomore year of college when the recession really hit. I think it was fall 2008, more or less. It was like because it was right before Obama got elected. But it's just, it's hard. How do you put savings away to go buy a house when you're busy trying to pay off your student debt? I mean, you basically go from one to the next. And even so, you can't do that because the loan is so big and exorbitant. And it's, go back to the interest rate episode. Figure out what the interest rate is on that loan. Maybe it's more cost effective to get a personal loan and pay it off. There's a podcast forum that I participate in called Bigger Pockets. And that's a question that comes up all the time. And I'm floored that people can't figure out how to answer that question in terms of, should I pay off my student loan or should I buy a property with a loan? And it's insane to me how many people can't answer that question. And again, it comes back to the HELOC statement of, what's the interest rate here? What's the interest rate there? It's really just about who's going to offer you the cheapest money. So if you've got the money and you could either buy real estate or you could pay off your student debt, the math I would do is figure out what your cap rate is on your investment property. If your cap rate on your investment property is greater than your student debt, go buy the property. It's just a matter of ratios all the time and trying to figure out where is everything better utilized. How do you make it more efficient? How do you squeeze last bits of juice out of everything? Because it's, if you don't do your homework and then you have the 20/20 hindsight someday, how irritating is that? It's terrible. If you can do your homework up front, more power to you. It's so much better. Huge proponent of that. That's why you're going to hear me reference cars so often. I like cars. I'm a total nerd about them, and I pride myself on making sure I get a good deal, no matter how stupid it is. There was one time I walked into a Living Spaces. I had been looking for a chair for a long time, and I had kind of gotten an idea of how expensive chairs can be. Stupid, by the way, in case you were curious. To get an upholstered, nice chair for a room. Real stupidly expensive. But, it's one of those fabulous first world problems to have. So I walked in, they were selling the floor model, plus the ottoman. It was cheaper than a regular chair. And I was just, every once in a while, I'll walk into some home goods store, whether it's Living Spaces or some of the local design shops, just to, I like walking around pretty things. Probably in part why I'm in real estate, walking through a new construction home. Breathe a nice sigh of relief of like all those, almost like commercials that you watch in terms of, oh, that's the idyllic picture life. This is great. It's beautiful. Want to come home to a nice perfect house and have everything be perfect. But then I have a dog and I walk upstairs and realize he's dug up my entire bed. I still love him no matter what. He's mine and he's not going anywhere. But anyways, walking through Living Spaces, to have one of those wonderful sway through the store and soak up all the prettiness / get an idea of where trends are going. Also helps for that. Saw this chair, bought it on the spot. Had no intention of buying a chair. Didn't know it was there because it was a floor model, and so it was on super sale. Looked at it, looked totally fine. At least fine enough for me. I don't care. Or I should say, I don't care if it's a floor model. There weren't any scuffs. It was fine. Walked out with it that day. But it was because I knew. I'm not one to make impulse purchases like that. But I've been looking. I look do my homework. It was great. It's a good chair. Works out great now. Mostly just holds lots of clothes, but I like it. So the reason why this article says that Fed says student debt has hurt the U.S. housing market is because students are busy paying off their debt and not buying real estate. When you take on a cost of, school my brother went to was like $45,000 a year. It's like one of the most expensive schools. It was nice. He had a good time. Maybe longer than he should have. But, yeah, it was not cheap. I had a friend from high school who, she went to Stanford. Her sister went to Stanford. There were 3 more kids in the family. Mom had to say, sorry kids, even if you get into Stanford, you can't go. You know, or if you do go, student loan. Because they just, putting 5 kids through Stanford, and Stanford I think it's like $45,000-$50,000 a year, and it's probably gone up even since. Crazy! So expensive. I mean, that's like, I don't know what the average wage is across the U.S., but it's probably pretty darn close to what it costs to go to Stanford for a year. So I think in Orange County they say it's like $75-$80 or something. Anyways, nuts, absolutely nutty. I don't know if you can hear this, but there's a snoring dog now. It's great. I guess it means he's happy. It's the foster, which is great. Tells me he's nice and content. Next one. The dream of home ownership is still alive for California renters. It is. 100%. As prices continue to not increase quite nearly as aggressively, yeah, you have your opportunity to get in, and it's going to suit your lifestyle. Or you should purchase based on what's going to suit your lifestyle, because hard to predict what's going to happen in the next 10 years. Economy overall is stable and good. I think the bigger questions will be the issues of affordability will impact pricing. Wow, he's starting to get loud. Weird interruption, but for anybody interested in dogs, check out IndieLabRescue.org. They're a great organization. They work exclusively with labs. Sorry if you're looking for another one, but they're wonderful people doing wonderful things. I happen to foster for them, and it's not always easy, and I more or less need a nap after having one, but they're great dogs, and it's a great organization. And whether you're looking to adopt a dog or foster, please call, please help. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. IndieLabRescue.org. Apply online, do home checks, the whole bit. As far as I'm concerned, dogs make life better, for sure. Normally I would have a dog mug, but not right now, apparently. Anyways, okay, so affordability factors, that's going to be a concern for sure. Especially with interest rates ticking up a little bit or new tax laws, the whole gambit, it's kind of dropped things a bit. So everybody gets nervous about a recession, but it's floundering. There are still people who want to buy. If you didn't hear me, mortgage applications increased this week. Increased. Means more and more people are applying to buy things. Floundering. So it's not for a lack of demand, it's just the purchase, friend of mine terms it purchasing power. The purchasing power has been reduced because a larger portion of your payment is going towards interest and less towards the principal. So when that happens, it reduces what you can purchase. So maybe it was $1 million, now it's down to $900,000 because it's increased. Your payment is going more towards the interest and less towards the principal. Principal being the actual cost of the home. So that's I think that's the part where people struggle, and that's where we're getting the frenzy. Is people are like, well, I can't figure out why isn't it worth what it was. That's why. That's all. It's not for the lack of buyers. You can still sell the home. That's not the concern. You do have to compete with your neighbors because there are more people listing their homes. But reaching that new high and breaking records, probably not going to happen. And I think people are just struggling to figure out how to navigate that. The other thing too, it's why you're also going to see more and more developers disappear, because once they're not seeing individual margins on properties be so significant, they have to go with what I call the Costco CarMax discount. So what that means is they're functioning based on volume. So Costco can offer you better deals for so many of these products because they're selling you 10 at a time rather than one. Like when you go to buy bars of soap, they're not going to sell you an individual bar of soap. You're going to buy flipping 12-pack or something crazy. But it means that each individual bar of soap is then reduced in price by X% because it means that they can move that much more product. That's why Costco works. CarMax is pretty similar. They don't specialize in any type of car, but because they have so many cars and they have such a variety, as long as they just keep moving the inventory, that's what they care about. They don't want to keep the inventory. They make that tiny margin and just keep it going. Another car example is, and I had this conversation yesterday, is entry-level luxury sedans. Those car makers turn and burn those things like crazy. They get you in. They get you liking the car. And they make almost nothing in terms of the margin, but they want to get you hooked so that you want to upgrade to the next one, or that you keep going because you want the newer, greater model. And they just keep going. And so they don't make a lot on those, but they just are doing such a volume because there's a much larger population of people who can afford those that the margin doesn't need to be quite so great. Anyways. But the dream's still alive because it's, if you know this stuff about the market and you're a buyer and other people haven't quite figured it out yet because they're still floundering and they haven't hit the frenzy portion, go get it. Go now. Go immediately. Go and submit that offer. Reduce it by 10%. Give it a shot. People are always afraid. They're always embarrassed to make these offers of, I don't want to offend anybody. It's business. It's part of the deal. Look, I know it's not fun. I've had to submit lowball offers. It's really uncomfortable at times. But at the end of the day, it's just a conversation of like, are you interested in this? Not going to take it? Okay, I'll try again. Like, what is offensive, what I have done in the past, is submitted a full price offer and not gotten a response. I don't know how you do that. That to me is shocking. You can, agent told me I needed to return in more things, like a pre-approval letter, all this other stuff, and I was like, well, but he's in a 1031 exchange, and he's selling this property. Take a look at it. The property that he's selling is the same price as the one that you're selling. So, and here's the loan structure on it. Do you think he can qualify for a loan? The loan that my client had against his property that he was selling was for less than a third of the value. Can't imagine a bank that wouldn't lend on that. That's insulting. Turning in a lowball offer, getting a conversation started, not insulting. People who are insulted by it, too emotionally attached to something. At the end of the day, you're looking to do a transaction. I understand it's hard. I understand real estate can be difficult. I understand it's where you live. But until you live there, it's business. Once you live there, and you attach all these feelings. I mean, I would probably feel the same way about my parents' house. They've lived in the same house for almost 25 years. 20 years now. And it's more or less the home I consider I grew up in. And there's a lot of special things about it. For instance, the first Surfline camera in all of the area was in the house I grew up in. Not everybody can say that. Not to say that that's a point of significant pride, but there's something to be said for that. There are different things of, they've got an extra bedroom, they have extra parking, it's a location that a lot of people like. There are some fuzzies that way that would make it harder to lose, depending they were to choose to sell, which I'm pretty sure my brother would kill them before they did that. But it's also more valuable for some of those reasons. regardless of any emotional attachment I might have to it, having an extra bedroom, typically more valuable. Having extra parking, especially at the beach, typically more valuable. The Surfline camera thing, it's going to be that's probably more comparable to like some weird auction deal where somebody's like, I gotta have Batman's car. The reason I mention that is I had a client who said that some guy paid a stupid amount of money for the Batman car. So it'll, it's pending that the Batman car buyer is looking to buy their house. And not really, but just somebody who's obsessed with Surfline who wants that first camera house in the area. But by and large, go make the offer. And if you're a seller, be happy that you received an offer. And if you don't like that number, just tell them that you don't like that number. Tell them to try again. That's okay. This whole, maybe some of it contributes to the whole overly politically correct culture. But again, there's the flip side of that as well. Like, we'll start the conversation. Start the conversation about, whether it's Me Too or all this other stuff. Start it. Start talking about it. Because it's like the number of times that people are like, I don't know, I really like this house, but I'm not sure. It's like, well, do you know that you like the house? Go make an offer. Go tell them that you like the house by going to make an offer. That's going to tell them that you like the house. Go back, show up in the house 5 times, walk around in it, walk through living spaces, put all that furniture in there and have that dream in your head. But until you make the offer, somebody else might take it from you. It's just the nature of the game. Because that seller who's maybe been sitting on a vacant property or sitting listed for 3 months with no activity is going to be pissed. And when they get an offer, they're going to be so stoked and just, oh my gosh, it's here. Oh, it's a crappy offer. Oh, what do we got to do? Oh, okay. Well, let's come down to this number. They only came up this amount. Oh, these people are terrible. What's wrong with them? I don't know. I don't want to come down anymore. Okay. That's the worst thing that's going to happen. I think that's why I think that's floundering friendly, where it's like you get a lot of disgruntled sellers, buyers, all the above, where everybody's like, oh, I think my house is worth more, but they need to sell for one reason or another. So you're like, but the market's telling me this. Okay, fine. I guess I'll do this. At the end of the day, your house is worth what somebody's willing to pay for it. That's how you define value. Next article, which I was very surprised by, but not at the same time. Global wealthy projected to grow 6.1% annually in the next 5 years. So this is that gap that people talk about in terms of the wealthy keep getting wealthier and the poor keep getting poorer. There are all sorts of reports that the quality of life out of poor people is still better than what it used to be. The number of times or the number of videos that you can find where it looks like somebody's completely homeless and they have a cell phone. One cell phone is of a reasonable cost at all. And how we define reasonable cost for a cell phone, I remember when I was in like high school, junior high, and you were like so excited to get like the coolest phone, which was probably $100 to $200 at the time. And some parents were willing to give their kid the Razor phone, which was a flipping fortune, or the Sidekick or whatever was cool back then. Go back and look at music videos, and that's the best indicator of what phones were cool and how expensive they were. Nowadays, we're spending $1,000 on a phone until Apple says, hey, we'll take your old one. We'll reduce the price on the new one that we sell to you. Just because they aren't updating all the gadgets and things and creating that internal need by providing a better product. I mean, that's really what they're saying, is if you haven't done that math and you aren't thinking like, I gotta stand outside Apple and go get that new phone, it's because they're not giving you a better product. If they were giving you a better product, you would be standing outside 24 hours a day for 5 days ahead before they're coming out with the new one, like everybody used to. But now that they're not doing that, they're having to call you and say, will you come in and turn in your old phone so we can sell you a new one? Steve Jobs, we all miss you. I say this by filming it on an iPhone currently. You did wonderful things. We're sorry that you're not here anymore. But stuff like that is shocking to me. Anyways, the reason I'm talking about the global wealthy and cell phones and started talking about homeless people who have cell phones. That's how that happens. The number of tangents is insane. But I'm not necessarily surprised by this complete gap in growth. And the reason I say this is I had a conversation with another agent last week, and she was telling me that somebody bought a house that was valued at they must have spent like $2 million on a house for their college kid to go to college. I think it's safe to presume that that college kid will not have college debt. A. B. That college kid at the age of 19 or what have you is going to have a bitchin' house. It was rad. And sometimes people choose to do this where they buy property for their kid and just throw them in there and look at it as an investment to sell down the road, which I understand. This was like, I get it. Okay, so get your kid a spot and then have an income property later. $2 million on a new construction property. That's nuts. Even for Newport, Orange County standards, that's pretty insane. That's just inviting every frat party to get crazy and bananas. But seeing stuff like that is usually the really good indicator that things are getting a little wild. And I would normally continue to say that, except we've got a slight correction from interest rates, tax laws, all the above, where you get this leveling off. Again, it's not to say that it's a terrible investment or things are going to completely nosedive. Again, we talked about equity in homes, good position. Talking about people are paying their mortgages and their 90-day delinquency, or what's the language? Severe delinquency? No. Serious delinquency rate declined. Great. Then it also means that there are no problem banks for all of 2018. That means people are paying their bills. If I could figure, if there's some article that I can find that basically indicates what everybody's credit ratings are, I would put money on the fact that people's credit scores now are better than they were X number of years ago. The only problem is that you do have some millennials who are like, I never figured out math and finances, which is in part why I started this. So you do have a few of those people out there, but it's a learning curve in terms of like, I'm in my 20s, I'm trying to figure this out. But by and large, it's good. Good things. I get it. The margin of growth, the possibility of really protecting your money, probably not there. But if that's where you want to be, then you have to go buy income property. And you have to go buy cash flowing income property because the likelihood of these appreciation swings, real low. Real low right now. Because if we are at that hypothetical top, which I don't think we're at the top per se, and I wouldn't look at it as a cyclical system. I would look at it more in the context of, okay, how is the overall health of the economy? Still pretty good. Again, those numbers, like I said, whether it's the people are paying their bills, there's good equity in the homes, and banks are good. Amazing things, because that's exactly what was the giant storm last time that caused the mass crisis. So we don't have that problem this time around, which is great. But that's how things work, is you've got one problem in the last recession, totally doesn't happen because they fix it. It's like that overcorrection. It's the concept of like Germany being overly PC with some things, like all the shame from World War II. It's I mean, you still have some like Nazi nationalists there, but by and large, it's a complete 180 overcorrection from 1940s. We are now 70 years later, and they're still trying to make up for it. Most of the people who are living today weren't alive when that was happening. And they're making people who are alive now who are making up for stuff that they never did. And I understand there's, you know, it's in the sentiment and the culture and all this stuff. I don't know. There's some of that. What did I say? I don't know. You didn't do it. It's okay. I understand. That's probably a terrible position to take, and I'm sure somebody's going to tell me it's terrible, but you can only do what's within your power. And where you get looped in after that is you do your best. Or at least I like to think people try their best. But yeah, I mean, there's this sense of floundering. But then, like I said, there's this frenzy because people are trying to figure out what all is going on, whether it's the government and the wall, or the economy and housing, or even the stock market. I mean, it's kind of across the board that way. And you're seeing it out of companies. It'll be interesting to see where, you know, they talk about companies that define eras. You know, coming out of the recession, the big powerhouses obviously have been Google, Apple, Netflix, Amazon. I'm sure there are others as well. But, I mean, those are kind of the hot button names. It's interesting to think who's going to be around next cycle. And I'm sure they'll all be around, but hell, Blockbuster used to be huge. I remember the one that was on the corner here, and now it's a parking lot. It's so crazy to think. But, yeah, I mean, where Apple is at with things, it's a little nerve-wracking. I mean, to be asking people to turn their phones in order to continue to move newer product. That's not a good sign. Or at least it's not to me. But yeah, I think in general, things are good. It's not perfect, but things are just stable. And it's hard to accept the fact that the margin of growth isn't there for extreme profitability. But things are good and stable. And I think there's something to be said for that. It's probably a good reflection of a lot of millennials who they don't want to have to think too hard about all this stuff. They just want to be able to buy a house, get a white picket fence, and live their lives. I mean, they're not looking to race to the top. It's just, and some people do. But I think by and large, after a lot of us saw what happened as a result of the recession, a lot of us, I think, are just like, we just want to be comfortable. We just want to live our life. I want to be able to go to brunch, go get tacos. I want to be able to go to my workout class, and I want to be able to come home to my dog and be a happy camper. And I think that's the attitude of the majority of the people, at least that I talk to. And there are some, and I think beyond that, it's just a matter of, I don't want to be stupid. I don't want to lose my money. I don't want to do what other people did. And by and large, they have good jobs. They're doing the right thing. And I get it. It's scary to put all your money down for a house or most of your money or something. It's scary. Totally scary. Because you're hoping that this thing does what it's supposed to do. But oftentimes, you have a good job that will continue to pay you and you'll be okay. It's when you have life changes and job changes that things get a little more challenging, but the exit strategy of either figuring out what you can rent your place for or getting a new job or the side hustle or what have you. I mean, there's all sorts of different ways to slice that pie. But so overall good. I think next week I'll talk about affordability and purchasing power more so. I feel like I keep referencing it and don't actually go over it in detail. But yeah, I think the challenge will be affordability, and I think there will be some people who lose a little bit, but it's not going to be some mass cycle change, but somebody who maybe purchased their home during a lower interest rate period, and if there's a slight correction and they have medical bills, somebody like that's going to suffer. But I think by and large everybody will be fine. But again, the affordability factor will contribute to whether or not that person gets out and can make any money or what have you. Anyways, hope everybody's keeping up with their New Year's resolutions. Again, my name's Christina. You can Google me. I am everywhere. Instagram, Christina Heimstead. Website, Christina Heimstead. Facebook, Christina Heimstead. Website, Christina Heimstead. And like my 3rd grade teacher taught me, if you need help spelling it, he eats in Mexico soggy tacos and extra dry tacos. She got an entire 3rd grade class to figure out how to spell that name. A bunch of 8-year-olds. If they can figure it out, so can everybody else. Just pronouncing it's not the fun part, that's for sure. Also, YouTube channel, Echo Capital. Can email me there. Also, just go to the website. Easiest way to do it. Happy New Year. Hope you have a dog-filled New Year, or a happy New Year, or continuing to start it off well. And I will see everybody next week. Bye. Thanks for watching.